It was a cold early morning in May 1980, and the deserted road in New Mexico stretched ahead like a black asphalt carpet, interrupted only by the beam of light from the headlights of a lone car. Myrna Hansen, a 28-year-old woman, was driving back home with her 6-year-old son after a vacation in Oklahoma. The silence around her was almost absolute, broken only by the gentle hum of the engine and the occasional whisper of the wind, which seemed to carry secrets forgotten by time. That region of New Mexico was known for its isolation. The vast expanses of desert, dotted with distant mountains, created a profound sense of solitude. For many, it was a place of mystery and fascination, a land where the night sky seemed to stretch endlessly, dotted with stars that, in popular imagination, could very well hide secrets from another world. As they advanced along the winding road, Myrna felt a growing unease. The sensation that something was wrong, something out of place, grew in her chest. She glanced in the rearview mirror, checking on her son. He was sleeping peacefully, oblivious to his mother's discomfort. Shortly after passing through the small, nearly forgotten town of Cimarron, a strange glow caught Myrna's attention in the distance. In the sky, pulsating spheres of light floated with a supernatural smoothness, creating a spectacle both fascinating and terrifying. Myrna tried to find a rational explanation, perhaps shooting stars or weather balloons. But the way those lights moved, almost dancing across the sky, was unlike anything she had ever seen. As the car approached, Myrna's perception became clearer. Those lights were part of something larger, a massive disc-shaped object hovering silently above the road. Her heart raced, a mix of fascination and dread consuming her. She had heard stories of UFOs, accounts of unexplained encounters, but she had never truly believed something like this could happen to her. And now, there it was, right before her eyes. The urge to flee was strong, but something, an almost magnetic force, kept her hypnotized, unable to look away. What was that? Why was it there? Feeling her body tremble, Myrna fought against the panic that began to overtake her. She wanted to accelerate, to get out of there as quickly as possible, but her feet seemed glued to the pedals, unable to obey her brain's commands. Suddenly, a flash exploded in the sky, and an intense light enveloped the car, blinding Myrna instantly. It was as if the very air around her had ignited, penetrating her skin, her mind, her soul. She tried to scream, but the sound caught in her throat. Everything around her disappeared into absolute whiteness, and the last thing she felt was her son's small hand squeezing hers, trembling with fear. Then everything went dark. When Myrna opened her eyes again, she felt a throbbing headache, and the light of dawn momentarily blinded her. She was back in the car, parked on the side of the road, with the rising sun bathing everything in golden light. For a moment, a sense of normalcy enveloped her, but soon confusion took over. What had happened? Looking at the clock, Myrna felt her heart stop for a second. 4 hours had passed since she had seen the lights. 4 hours missing from her memory, a void she couldn't fill. The urgency to leave was overwhelming, but the car showed no signs of life. Myrna had to find another way to get home, though the details of that journey remained hazy in her mind. In the days that followed, the fear and confusion only grew. Myrna couldn't shake the certainty that something terrible had happened during those lost hours. She felt watched, as if with invisible eyes followed her every move. Her son, though seemingly normal, was also disturbed, suffering from recurring nightmares and becoming more withdrawn, with an inexplicable fear of the dark that hadn't existed before. Determined to uncover the truth, Myrna decided to seek professional help. She contacted Leo Sprinkle, a psychologist and UFO researcher, and Paul Benowitz, an electronic engineer and investigator with the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization in Arizona. Both had extensive experience with abduction cases and unexplained phenomena, and they were deeply intrigued by Myrna's account. The hypnosis sessions were meticulously planned and conducted between May 11th and June 3rd, 1980. During these sessions, Myrna was placed in an expanded state of consciousness, allowing her to revisit the events of that night with terrifying clarity. As Myrna delved into her subconscious, fragmented pieces of memories began to emerge. With each session, she relived in vivid detail the moment she saw the spheres of light approaching, the paralyzing dread as she realized the flying saucer was hovering over the road. Under hypnosis, Myrna recalled the terror that consumed her as she saw figures dressed in white descending from one of the craft. These figures, moving with an almost ethereal fluidity, began to mutilate a cow near the road. The horror of witnessing that scene made Myrna want to scream, but no sound came out. She tried to move away, but was suddenly immobilized by an invisible force. Myrna and her son were quickly captured and separated, an experience that would become the center of her nightmares for years to come. Myrna described in chilling detail how she was taken inside the craft. The walls were smooth and shiny, emitting a cold light that seemed to come from all directions. She was placed in a room where the air had a strange metallic smell. Immobilized, she was laid on a metal table and undressed by those thin beings with disproportionately large heads, huge black eyes, and grayish skin, the so-called grays so often reported in abduction cases. The examinations that followed were invasive and painful. Myrna felt a sharp pain as a probe was inserted into her body, exploring her internal organs in a way that surpassed any human understanding. She described the sensation of having every inch of her being scrutinized as if she were being dissected alive. The being showed no emotion or empathy, performing the procedures with mechanical precision. As the examinations continued, Myrna felt a different presence in the room. A taller humanoid being with yellowish skin, wearing a robe resembling that of a priest, entered. This being emanated an aura of authority that seemed to dominate the others. He approached Myrna, his expression strangely calm and understanding. In a soft, hypnotic voice, he apologized for the suffering she was enduring and reprimanded the Greys, ordering them to be punished for their actions. The momentary relief Myrna felt upon seeing her son brought back to her was quickly replaced by new terror. The humanoid being offered to take Myrna and her son on a tour of the craft, as if that could alleviate the trauma they had suffered. Reluctantly, she agreed, still dazed and vulnerable. The craft descended smoothly into a desert area of New Mexico, which Myrna recognized as being between Las Cruces and Roswell. They exited the craft and were led along a narrow path to an elevator hidden in the middle of the desert. The sensation of descent seemed endless, and Myrna felt her heart beating faster with fear of the unknown. When the elevator doors opened, Myrna was stunned by what she saw. They were in a vast underground base resembling a futuristic city. The lighting was soft, with a mix of artificial lights, creating a surreal atmosphere. Myrna watched in disbelief as Greys worked side by side with humans. They moved in a coordinated manner, as if they were colleagues working on a complex project. The corridors were long and winding, leading to various rooms and work areas. Myrna saw humans operating advanced equipment, conversing with the Greys in a language she couldn't understand. The scene was so disconcerting that she felt her mind wavering between reality and nightmare. How could humans and extraterrestrials work together like this? What was that base really about? At one point, her son was separated from her again. The sight of her little boy being taken away by a Grey made her heart ache. She tried to resist, but an invisible force held her still. The humanoid being with yellowish skin assured her that he would be safe. But Myrna's maternal instincts sent her into a panic. The anguish of being separated from her son gave her strength she didn't know she had. With tremendous effort, she broke free from the force holding her and ran through the corridors, screaming and calling for her son. Fear and adrenaline propelled her as she wandered through the labyrinthine facility, her footsteps echoing off the metallic walls. In her frantic search, Myrna stumbled upon a slightly ajar door. She entered, and what she saw made her freeze in horror. The room was dark, illuminated only by a faint light emanating from large glass tanks. Inside the tanks, parts of human bodies floated in a transparent, bubbling liquid. Dismembered limbs, organs, and even human heads floated, their expressions frozen in a final moment of agony. The sight was too much for Myrna. She fell to her knees, feeling her stomach churn and her mind spin. Tears streamed down her face as she tried to process the horror she was witnessing. Minutes felt like hours as she knelt there, unable to move, trapped in a nightmare that seemed to have no end. Eventually, the beings found her and lifted her from the floor, reuniting her with her son. They were taken together to another room where devices were once again inserted into their bodies. Myrna felt a sharp pain as the instruments penetrated her skin, but the worst was yet to come. Intense flat ashes of light began to shine, accompanied by a deafening noise that reverberated in their minds. It was as if something was being ripped from inside their heads, memories being forcibly and painfully erased. After what felt like hours of mental torture, Myrna and her son were taken to an empty room. They were exhausted, physically and emotionally. The beings left them there for what felt like an eternity, until they were finally led back to the elevator that would take them to the surface. The sensation of ascending through the elevator was surreal, as if they were leaving a nightmare behind. But the terror persisted. As they emerged back into the desert, they were taken back to the flying saucer that had brought them. The craft silently transported them back to the location where their car was parked. When Myrna regained consciousness, she was back at the starting point, but the physical and psychological marks of what had occurred were undeniable. In the days following her experience, Myrna sought medical attention. The examinations revealed unexplained injuries to her reproductive organs and painful scars on parts of her body that had never had issues before. Additionally, she developed a peculiar infection that doctors couldn't identify or effectively treat, further deepening the mystery surrounding her experience. Myrna's case quickly became a reference point in the ufological community. Her detailed description of the underground base matched, according to some investigators, an area of the Manzano base, a subterranean complex known for storing nuclear weapons. However, Paul Benowitz and other ufologists believed that the location Myrna described was, in fact, the infamous Dulce base, an underground facility that, according to conspiracy theories, is managed by a coalition of extraterrestrials and human military personnel. Myrna's account of humans and Greys working together fueled theories about the controversial 9 Points Treaty, a supposed agreement established in 1954 between the U.S. government and the Greys, allowing them to conduct abductions and experiments on humans in exchange for advanced technology. The descriptions of tanks containing human body parts raised disturbing questions about the true nature of these experiments and the involvement of earthly authorities. As Myrna's case gained notoriety, other similar accounts began to surface, creating a pattern of experiences that seemed to confirm the existence of a coordinated abduction operation. Many abductees reported seeing underground facilities, invasive medical procedures, and encounters with different types of extraterrestrial beings, including Greys and higher-ranking humanoids. Myrna Hansen turned her traumatic experience into a life mission. She became an important voice in the abductee community, sharing her story at conferences and meetings, offering support to others who had gone through similar experiences. Her courage in facing skepticism and ridicule to tell her truth inspired many others to do the same. Myrna Hansen's case continues to challenge our understanding of reality and forces us to consider the possibility that perhaps we are not alone in the universe, and that our visitors may have agendas that surpass our moral and ethical comprehension. The physical and psychological marks she carried for the rest of her life serve as silent testimony to an encounter with the inexplicable. Decades have passed since that cold early morning in May 1980, and many questions about Myrna Hansen's case remain unanswered. Does the Dulce base really exist? Does the U.S. government maintain secret agreements with extraterrestrial races? What is the true purpose of the abductions and experiments conducted on abductees? The case of Myrna Hansen is truly fascinating and terrifying, don't you think? Some details of this story might not have made it into this video, which is understandable since it's just a summary of what really happened to Miss Hansen on that fateful day. If you have more information about this case, feel free to share it in the comments. Also, we'd love to hear your thoughts. What are your impressions of this story? Your engagement is incredibly valuable to our channel, and we truly appreciate your support. And of course, if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. It's free and helps us tremendously. Don't forget to hit the like button and share this video with fellow UFO enthusiasts. See you in the next video.